And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this Friday evening, post-Thanksgiving hangover here in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So here's another movie anniversary for you. A film that I like, but a movie that is somewhat problematic to me simply because of the franchise that it is the third sequel to an extraordinary original and first sequel. And it is a franchise that I am still ticked off from 33 years ago that the franchise took a wrong turn. And I don't mean the Wrong Turn movies, but the franchise made a wrong turn and is just, I've not been interested in it since that. So the movie in question, which was released 27 years ago this Friday, is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, his third sequel to Ridley Scott's fantastic 1979 Alien. And Alien Resurrection is a movie that was a box office hit. It didn't get great reviews, but it had a lot of defenders, and I would consider myself one of those defenders, because I liked it. It's, to me, a step up from Alien 3. And I love David Fincher, but Alien 3 was just, it was doomed from the jump. Fox had so many different screenplays for direct sequels to James Cameron's Aliens, which is the best film in the series. It's better than the original, and I believe it is the single best movie that James Cameron ever made. And that's really saying something. But Alien 3 was just a misfire. It's just a misfire. And the way that they sort of trashed all of the emotional climaxes, if you will, all of the extraordinary moments and bits and conclusions of Aliens, and they just flushed it down a fucking toilet in the first 2 minutes of Alien 3. I'm still mad about that all these years later. I am still pissed off. Now, Alien Resurrection, it's not that it redeems Alien 3, but it tells a different story, a distinctive and somewhat disturbing story of cloning, which was a pretty big deal back then with Dolly the sheep and everything that was going on in the world at that particular juncture with concepts of cloning. And the notion of, well, the only way, spoiler alert, the only way that we were going to see Ripley in Alien Resurrection, well, there were two ways. Some kind of a time travel scenario, which didn't exist in these movies, or cloning Ripley. Because, spoiler alert, Ripley does not survive the events of Alien 3. She commits a pretty selfless act that some people were like, oh, why would she do that? I don't even want to go there. That was another thing that pissed me off. I'll leave that to you to decide what I mean by that. But Alien Resurrection was much buzzed about, not necessarily because people were talking it up in advance of its release, but because of the off-the-wall, bizarre, it's still fucking weird to this day, casting of Winona Ryder. Now, Winona Ryder is a kind of actress who can seem miscast in a lot of different roles. Now, I love Winona Ryder. You know, my generation, she became a star. She's a couple of years older than me. And famously, Adam Sandler, I think it was the second Hanukkah song, Winona Ryder Drinks Manischewitz Wine. That got a lot of laughs. Winona Ryder, though, when we saw the trailer and we realized that she was in it, I was cracking up. I don't know why I found that funny, but I'm like, if you had to pick an actor or actress, who would be the least likely star actor or actress in 1997 to appear in the third sequel to Alien? I might have actually said Winona Ryder. I think I might have thrown Bill Murray in there, or possibly George Clooney. It was just crazy. And I remember watching the trailer, and I think it was when I saw Face Off. So it was that kind of a crowd. It was a young-ish crowd. And I was seeing a trailer. This is great. Ron Perlman, an actor I love, and Michael Winsott, the guy with the gravelly voice, he's always great, kind of a culty type of an actor. But when Winona showed up in the trailer, the fucking theater went crazy. I actually don't like Winona's performance in the film, although her character makes sense. In the realm of, let's just say, Ian Holm in Ridley Scott's original, fucking brilliant actor. Lance Henriksen in Aliens, another extraordinary performer. Lance Henriksen, practically a cheat code himself. What an intense, interesting actor. When compared to those two, Winona doesn't really measure up. Now, you could easily say she's kind of, not that she's defeated by the material, but her role is not really that interesting. Whereas I would say that Ash in the original, and especially Bishop, the parts were written better for those films. And Alien Resurrection gets into a lot of stuff that I don't think it needs to get into. A lot of the kind of almost rivalry. And do they trust Ripley? Can you trust Ripley? Because she has the memories of Ellen Ripley, but she is essentially an advanced replica of Ellen Ripley. She's super strong and, the stamina, all of that sort of stuff. The film has some incredible action sequences, and most of the effects work. There's an underwater chase that it's incredible. And you could see how Jeunet, the filmmaker, it's Jeunet, is an absolute genius, because he had to conceptualize a lot of this stuff and put it to work and figure out how he was going to do it before he did it. And this incredible underwater chase, I think Gary Dourdan was one of the other actors in here, another very interesting actor, very unique look, the eyes and everything. The casting, even with Winona maybe not giving a home run performance, but again, the issue isn't her, it's the part was underwritten. I don't think that they were expecting an actor of Winona's stature to take that role in this film. But this underwater chase, ticking clock kind of a scene, it to me is the highlight of the film, because it comes out of nowhere. You're not expecting it, and it is such a home run. It elevates what came before and what came after. And another actor of the era who was a very interesting actor, and I think about it, there were a lot of really great bits of casting. Leland Orser, somebody who to me always looked like Dustin Hoffman in the movie Papillon. He had a very similar shaped face of Dustin Hoffman. If somebody told me they were cousins, I would believe it. Leland Orser has a really good role in this film. It's not extended, but he's a guy who seems to have been impregnated by one of the many aliens. And the way that his character acts and reacts is very believable and scary, because what he is, it amounts to a human being, is a ticking time bomb. And it's more a question of, when do we kill this guy? Do we kill him first? It's all horrendous if you start analyzing it. Me watching a movie at age 23, I wasn't really going through the mental meat grinder to this extent, even though I already was an NYU film school grad by this point. I had graduated the previous May, but I was just excited that the movie was working and did work, despite, me having some problems. But this is a film that I would give 3 stars out of 4. Alien is 4 stars out of 4. Aliens is 4 stars out of 4, whether you're talking the theatrical version or James Cameron's kind of extended director's cut, which is the preferred cut, I think is slightly better. But anybody who says, now I prefer the theatrical cut, they're not going to get an argument. Now, if we're talking about The Abyss, if somebody with a straight face says, I've seen both and I prefer the theatrical cut, then I'm going to question, do they know anything about movies? The theatrical cut it's not even close. The director's cut is in Cameron's top 3. That's how good it is. The theatrical cut, I just think that it's not even good. It's barely a thumbs up kind of a movie. Now, what Alien Resurrection, though, gets right is the kind of angst and the sort of jitters the audience develops because the character of Ripley is not really Ripley. And you go significant chunks of the movie, and Sigourney is phenomenal. she's okay in Alien 3, but Alien 3, she's mostly on defense. There's too much of her just reacting. And one of the things that we love about Aliens is that as much as the colonial Marines are under assault, they're backpedaling for most of the movie, trying to figure out a way to make a stand. You know, like Arnold in Predator, where they keep running, and finally Arnold says, listen, we make a stand now, there won't be anybody left to get to the chopper! But Ripley in Alien Resurrection, Sigourney plays the character in a very arch way, where she seems to be almost winking to the audience, but she's doing it in a different kind of way. She's not doing it in a, hey, I'm the star of the movie kind of way. And it's difficult to figure what is she transmitting, because first time seeing the movie, I started thinking, this Ripley is evil. I thought there was going to be another clone that was actually going to be a good guy. It really fucked with the audience's head. Sigourney has this kind of sardonic smile and this sarcasm and this edge to her where the character does not seem, I don't know if she's really on the right side here. This is, and it makes you more nervous. And there's nothing like that in any of the first three movies. One of the other problems I had with Alien 3, other than the fact that it was so gloomy and they had completely destroyed the ending of Aliens. Sorry for the spoilers, but it's what it is. Another actor I love, who was later on Game of Thrones, Charles Dance. Charles Dance in Alien 3 is phenomenal. Like, it's the kind of performance where he's on his way to a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination, and then his character gets bumped off. Of all the needless deaths or over-the-top deaths that come out of nowhere in the Alien series, I would say Charles Dance getting bumped off was the most egregious, and it hurt the film. But there were so many different elements of that movie that hurt the film. The only reason why, to me, it gets as much as 2.5 out of 4 and kind of marginal thumbs up is because Sigourney is fully committed. You know, she famously shaved her head for the part. And Charles Dutton, who is now retired. Charles Dutton is another actor. I don't believe that man ever gave anything less than a great performance. I think, you know, the TV show Rock, one of the great TV shows, Charles Dutton in Alien 3, he brings a gravitas. Sigourney always brings gravitas. But Charles Dutton's line readings, the moment when he basically sits her down and points out that although he may be a man of integrity, we're in a fucking hellhole here. We're in a hellhole, and if you think that I'm some kind of good guy, lady, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't want to know me, lady, is the way that he phrases it, and you feel it. He does not come across like an actor just reading lines. He feels like he's become the character. And with Alien Resurrection, like I said, it was a box office hit. It is running, I think it's 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, which would give you an idea that there were a lot of people who were kind of, because normally when a movie is in that range, there are going to be people giving it ultimately a thumbs down, but saying there are good elements, this is not a disaster. And then there are going to be people who just outright hate it and people who outright love it. And I remember the New York newspapers, I don't think any of them gave it even as much as 3 stars out of 4. And Newsday, which is what I got, only gave it 1.5. They actually had it as being worse than Alien 3. So Alien 3 got some really good reviews, because if you just want to look at it artistically, if you were not emotionally invested in James Cameron's Aliens, then Alien 3 works better. Because from the craftsmanship standpoint, there is no denying that David Fincher, who was a very young filmmaker at the time, and he really was given a hard time by the studio heads at Fox, which is not surprising. But if you can just appreciate the artistry of a young filmmaker who was finding his stride in Fincher, okay. And yeah, the movie looks incredible. There's a certain level of detail in every shot. It's not a disposable horror film or even a disposable sci-fi actioner. It was made with care. It was made with love by everybody in the cast. It's just not that good. Now, the filmmaker who did Resurrection, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, I was familiar with him. I watched a movie that probably indirectly is what got him the gig. Again, you think about it. A major studio in Fox entrusts the third sequel to a beloved franchise that had had a dip with Alien 3, but they entrusted to a French filmmaker. And both Winona Ryder and Sigourney Weaver and Charles Dutton, everybody in the cast, the studio heads loved his work. And he made a movie in the early 90s called Delicatessen, which I saw in film school, and it's kind of a black comedy. Didn't work for me. I was disappointed because this was one of those movies that people told me, oh, it's amazing, it's so good, and it was just fucked up, and it didn't seem to be any point to it being fucked up. Didn't work for me. But he impressed enough people. That was part of the reason why he got Alien Resurrection. And it ended up grossing about 2.5 times its production cost. I almost like being a clown here. I believe it made between 170 and 180 on a full budget, included marketing, of about 70 million. So the audience was there for it. And the film did get good word of mouth. More people who saw it liked it. And there was that sense, it's kind of like the running joke now for however many years. Whenever M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie that people like, people say, return to form. Whatever that is, as if somebody needs to, like, you're getting a grade on this? But there was a sense that the Alien franchise at least had righted it to some extent, that this was a movie that was not a cash grab. This was a distinctive, different, very uncomfortable story. I mean, this was not just a straightforward, shoot 'em up like Aliens, or a haunted house story like the original. And that's really what it is. It's a 10 Little Indians story where they get bumped off one at a time. Like, this is not an accident. That's exactly what it is. And Alien 3, there isn't much. There's one, kind of terrifying alien stowaway in this sort of desolate prison planet. But what Alien Resurrection also does is that it introduces more of an evolution of the xenomorph. And this unbelievably, from a creativity standpoint, this creature that they call the newborn, which might be the most horrifying single creature in the entire series. And even in the scenes, you can tell that it's not green screen. There's animatronics, and I believe that it was the great Stan Winston who worked on Jurassic Park and Aliens and so many, The Fly, so many incredible films. Like, Winston was the best to ever do that. The sequences of those kinds of effects where that the actors are interacting with animatronics or small models or miniatures, the seams don't show. Like, there is a moment with this so-called newborn sequence. It's terrifying. That might be the other highlight in the film, because the creature was given such an unconventional look where the skull is vaguely human, and it doesn't appear to be that intimidating when we think about, for example, the Alien Queen in James Cameron's 1986 film, which was really one of the most incredible creature designs in the history of cinema. Like, how did they even think about it in the first place? And also, if you go on YouTube and you watch the costume, the early tests, trying to figure out what they were going to do as far as how do we make the Alien Queen animatronic, how do we do this? The early tests, it looks horrendous. Like, if this was what you were going on, you would have thought, well, they can't get this thing to work. This is ridiculous. It's just this boxy looking thing moving, like somebody is going like this, moving arms around. It didn't work. But then when it came time to shoot, they had figured enough things out where, with the rapid cutting and what Cameron was able to do, it looks like a real creature. The newborn in Resurrection is so powerful, it probably could have taken the Alien Queen out in hand-to-hand combat, even though it's about a 10th, maybe a 20th of the size. That is how powerful and terrifying this creature is. And so for me, those are the takeaways of the movie. Sigourney is incredible. The underwater chase with a ticking clock because everyone's going to run out of air. Speaking of Arnold, give these people air. And then the concept and the execution of the newborn creature. Those three things, and the fact that there is a twist with Winona's character, which did surprise a lot of audiences. I kind of knew what was coming. But the twist with that character works. I'm not going to give anything more away for those who haven't seen it. Yeah, this is a movie that is absolutely, you have to see it if you're a fan of the first two. And if, because there are some people that refuse to watch it and refuse to do anything more with the Alien series to this day because they were so pissed off about Alien 3. If you want to say I was a glutton for punishment, you can. But Alien Resurrection right now, I believe, is free with Hulu if you get Hulu. And ironically, Arnold and Predator, I think, is also on Hulu. And of course, you have the cross-pollination of Alien versus Predator. But a little bit of trivia, the first hint of any kind of a crossover, well, the studio was Fox, but at the end of Predator 2, which was a movie that is now pretty well remembered by history, but it didn't do as well at the box office. Danny Glover kind of took over for Arnold. Arnold's character is referenced by Gary Busey's character in Predator 2, but so it's set in that universe. But Arnold he's not in it, and Glover basically plays the lead. Mike Harrigan, I think, was the name of his character, but this is a mild spoiler. There is an alien artifact. We know what it is. There is an alien artifact in that movie. There is an artifact that is very clearly the xenomorph from James Cameron's Aliens. And that was the first notion of this is a shared universe, and then Alien versus Predator, and not only the movie series, a few of which were pretty big hits, but also the video games, which were incredibly successful. You just don't know which IP is going to connect with another, and which franchise might inadvertently kickstart a brand new franchise. There's no way to know. But the creativity of Alien Resurrection is what I remember most. The film is not entirely successful. There are some slow spots. There's a little bit of, there's nonsense with the Michael Wincott character and Gary Dourdan. There's a lot of stuff I feel like the script needed another pass. But Sigourney comes to play, as she always does. Winona does the best she can with kind of limited character and limited material. And the staging, the kind of practical staging of the action sequences, really terrific. And if you go into the movie thinking in those terms, this is not going to be much green screen. There's going to be a lot of animatronics. There's going to be some models and some miniatures, but there is going to be practical effects that are really impressive. And it is a movie that is certainly better remembered by history than Alien 3, although it's not really that high of a bar, unfortunately. I want to reboot The Matrix and have Fox decide to go with one of the scripts that brought the alien to planet Earth. That would have been great, because the original teaser, it teased that Alien 3 was going to be some kind of a situation where maybe Ripley, returns home and here's your xenomorph and let's rock and roll. Didn't happen. We got what we got. But Alien Resurrection to me is a worthy entry to the series. And if you have the opportunity, if you get one of the streamers where it's free, you won't be disappointed. It's kick-ass in its way. It is definitely a 3 stars out of 4, 3.5 out of 5 kind of a movie. Well worth seeing. Released on this day. Well, no, on this day. It was released this Friday. The actual release date was November 26, 1997, just in case you were wondering. But Alien Resurrection, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and starring Sigourney Weaver, Ron Perlman, Michael Wincott, Gary Dourdan, and in a very surprising role, Winona Ryder. This has been episode 371 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for taking this Friday evening drive with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.